everyone, welcome to another episode of Through the Looking Glass, and today we're looking at one of the more popular but sometimes forgotten about characters. Today we are looking at Red Alert. And you know what they say about Red Alert?
Sir, are you absolutely sure? It does mean changing the bulb.
Now, Red Alert has one of the more interesting personalities of the Generation 1 cartoon, and is also representative of his alt mode in that he transforms into a fire car. I guess we'll get to a fire early to assess the situation, and he's also the Autobot security director. And what's quite interesting about that is he has inbuilt paranoia. He's always paranoid about everything, feels like the sky's going to fall in on his head at any moment. And of course, much like this, he thinks there's a threat everywhere. He thinks the Decepticons are going to attack, he thinks that there's a safety hazard over there. But what is quite fun and interesting is that he's always had a bromance with Generation 1 Inferno. And the two of them, obviously both being fire trucks, fire vehicles, obviously share a bond. And you have the cool, calm, bulky Inferno who seems to keep Red Alert on the straight and narrow and doesn't go too much tinfoil hat on you. One thing about Red Alert is as he features fairly prominently in Season 2 of the Generation 1 cartoon, he doesn't get written out or killed off in a 1986 movie. But much like a lot of the Generation 1 cast, particularly in Season 1 and 2, they are just automatically killed off. We don't particularly know what happens to him. Being a security officer or fire officer, but to have this inbuilt paranoia does have a very interesting charm to it. It's a bit of a comic relief to a very serious role. Now, in all of the comic continuities, Red Alert has had somewhat of a small featuring in all of them, but nothing particularly big. In the original Marvel comics, he was only particularly used in the UK version of the comics. He was one of the few to get into the Generation 2 comics, but was killed off by Jyaxus. And even in IDW, he does make it onto the crew of the Lost Light, but it isn't one of the more prominent characters you'll come across. It's a bit of a shame for a character who could have fitted in quite well, but has never quite found his spotlight in each. It is worth mentioning that in IDW, they do play on a little bit of his schizophrenia, his paranoia, in that he thinks he hears voices everywhere, which, spoilers if you haven't read it, he does. But it's quite interesting that that characteristic gets played back in. Now in Armada, this is a completely different character. This is of course just someone else using his name, but is still a security vehicle of sorts, so the name Red Alert seems quite appropriate. But this character couldn't be more different. There's a calmness here, there's a steadiness, and actually Red Alert in Armada spends most of this series trying to keep Hotshot in line. What is quite interesting is that in the Armada series, for those who know, they of course come with their own minicons, and Red Alert's minicon in Armada is called Long Arm, which is actually a little bit sad and ironic because Red Alert actually loses his hand as a result of an earlier battle, and I think just has a pistol hand. So now he has a minicon called Long Arm. Little on the nose, wouldn't you think? But he is a faithful lieutenant to Optimus Prime as like no other, and is the steady rock for the Autobots in this series. But coming up to more recent times in the War for Cybertron series, Red Alert has been much more of a medic, which is a very unusual role. Now, introduced in the Siege cartoon, he gave us some insight that he wasn't particularly a medic, he was actually a warrior who was given a role of patching up his comrades. And now in Earthrise he's carrying on that vein, but he's pretty much integrated into the Autobot forces by this point. There isn't much comparing to the original Generation 1 Red Alert. There's no paranoia here. If anything, there is a battle-hardenedness, there's a sturdiness, ready for combat. It's a different take on a very loved trait of an existing character. So in summary, Red Alert is one of the more beloved characters of the Transformers universe and transforms into a fairly regularly seen mould of a vehicle, of a car throughout the years, the Lamborghini coming out once again. But it's a character that often gets forgotten about. Whether it is a very niche role that he's always been in, or he was never intended to be one of the more forefront characters and didn't carry over into the other series of the Generation 1 cartoon, maybe that plays into the fact that he gets forgotten about. It is a shame because there is a following with this character, and I think it's more nowadays about his bromance with Inferno, which is still a very lovely thing to see. But it's a shame we don't talk about just Red Alert on his own, because he actually has a lot to offer. But there you go, that's Red Alert Through the Looking Glass. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment below if you want to see someone else get the treatment of Through the Looking Glass. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.